Om Namo Narayanaya. Namaskaram, everyone. Thank you for coming out to our talk today. My name is Priya, and I am one of the core members of the youth group Yuvathma and will be your host for this morning. Today, we are proud to present our Yuva Chat, Spiritual Talks for the Young Mind event. We are planning other Yuva Chat events in the upcoming months where we will be having different authors and speakers coming in to talk to us. So keep an eye on our social medias for posts related to these events. For those of you who may not be aware, Yuvathma is a youth wing of the Guruvayurappan Temple of Brampton and is led by Hindu youth within the Greater Toronto community. In addition to planning fun and engaging activities for young adults, Yuvathma is excited to present eminent speakers at our events as well. Our guest speaker for today's Yuva Chat's Spiritual Talks for the Young Mind is Sri Madhavan Kutty Manikath. Sri Madhavan Kutty Manikath was born in the village of Kallepadam in the state of Kerala, India. Upon graduating from high school, he moved to Bombay for his higher studies. After graduating with honors from the University of Bombay, he worked in the city for a few years. Thereafter, he moved to the Middle East and worked in countries including Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, and the UAE. In the early 90s, Sri Madhavan Kutty migrated to Canada with his young family. He is currently residing in GTA, Canada, along with his wife. A summary for beginners, the Mahabharata, is Madhavan Kutty's first major literary work. A summary for beginners, the Mahabharata, is a high-level prose summary of the great Indian epic, the Mahabharata. The main target group for this book is young adults and first-generation Hindu children living abroad. While living away from India, Sri Madhavan Kutty noticed that apart from school activities, playing video games, and watching sports, his children were growing up in the magical world of Sesame Street and animated TV series like The Simpsons, Batman, and Barney. His children read books like Star Wars, Harry Potter, and The Lord of the Rings, and had limited exposure to their roots. As parents are usually busy with work pressures and household activities, they may not have time to explain Hindu epics to their children. Under the circumstances, in order to help their children get a better understanding of their ancestral roots, the best thing a parent can do is to take advantage of their children's reading habit and present them with books that would give them exposure to their roots. Mr. Madhavan Kutty's book, A Summary for Beginners, the Mahabharata, is an excellent entry-level book. The original Mahabharata, an epic poem of 100,000 couplets, was composed by the great Indian poet Veda Vyasa in the ancient Indian language of Sanskrit. It deals with the rivalry between two royal families over ownership of their kingdom, ultimately leading to a devastating war that perished one side of the family. On a deeper note, the story depicts Krishna, an avataram of Vishnu, as a central figure, guiding and leading one side of the cousins to victory because of their adherence to Dharma. Though Madhavan Kutty's book, A Summary for Beginner, the Mahabharata, is meant for adolescents and youth, it can be enjoyed by all. Now, before we get started with the talk, just some housekeeping rules. Please keep your mics muted and your videos off throughout this lecture to keep distractions and disruptions to a minimum. And if you have any questions for Sri Madhavan Kutty, please send them through the chat box function on Zoom. For your reference, the chat function is located at the bottom of your screen. And we will be having a question and answer period at the end of the session, so we will have time to answer any questions you may have. Now, without further ado, let's begin the lecture. Sri Madhavan Kutty, please take it from here.
Good morning. Thank you, Priya, for that awesome introduction. I wouldn't have done it the way you did it yourself. Namaskaram. Good morning and happy Gandhi Jayanti to all of you. Heartful welcome and sincere greeting to all the participants, especially the Yuvathma, the young souls. The youth wing of Guruvayurappan Temple of Brampton deserves a huge round of applause for organizing the Yuva Chat, which is focused on imparting spiritual wisdom contained in our ancient scriptures. So, at the outset, my congratulations and best wishes to the youth wing. I would also like to take this opportunity to announce that I'll be more than happy to render my services in any form I can to the youth wing, if and when needed. You guys are doing an amazing job. My sincere gratitude to the board members of the temple for giving me this opportunity. Is there something wrong with the video, please, Priya?
Oh no, I just
No,
turned
it's no problem. Continue, because we just unpinned from Priya. So it's just you now, because you're the speaker, right?
Okay, thanks.
Please continue.
Yeah. So again, like I said, my sincere gratitude to the board members of the temple for giving me this opportunity. I'm told that I have about 45 minutes at my disposal. I don't think I will take all this time. Nevertheless, in order to put a structure around my talk, let me set an agenda. So number one, I will start with a brief personal introduction. Then I will go and give a quick background of writing this book. Then I will talk a bit information about the book itself. And finally, I will have some interesting facts and snippets from the book. Now, coming to personal introduction, as introduced by Priya, I am Madhavan Kutty. My wife Padmini is here with me. Can you just join me here for a second? Yeah, everybody can see, right?
yes, we can see.
Okay, yeah. So my wife Padmini is also here with me. Now, getting back to between us, we have been in Canada for the past 30 plus years, and we are the proud parents of 3 boys. Our eldest son Prakash, along with his wife Angela and their 2 daughters, Anju and Avi, are settled in Brooklyn, New York. Our second son Prashant and his wife Sumitra are currently based in Jersey City, New Jersey. They were blessed with their first child, a baby boy, just a couple of days back. And our youngest son Prashant and his wife Ishani live with their pet dog Albus. They are also based in Brooklyn. I'm very happy to inform that they have joined this call today. And so I have my niece, my brother-in-law, my co-brother-in-law, and some of my brothers from India. Padmini and I are based in Unionville, Markham. We are trying to live a full life in an empty nest. I am a retired IT professional. I started my career in India in early 70s when the IT profession was at its nascent stage. I left India in the mid 70s to the Middle East and later on moved to Canada. I am not a professional writer, as mentioned by Priya. This is my first book. The only other literary work I have ever done is a memoir that was published to my immediate family on my Satadi. Now I'll talk a bit background about writing the book itself. Though not a voracious reader, I used to read a lot even during my working life, especially coming to Canada. Yes, commuting by GO train was a blessing. And my reading was not limited to a specific subject or author. I used to read whatever I could put my hands on, whether it is technology, fiction, non-fiction, history, biography, or anything for that matter. Retirement gave me the luxury of extra time to read. However, after retirement, I found myself attracted more and more to religious and spiritual books. This is generally quoted when someone make. So there is a saying in Mahabharata, which in Malayalam says, Urvashi Shabam Upagaramai. Again, Urvashi Shabam Upagaramai. Translation, Urvashi's curse turned out to be a boon. Well, this is literally and generally quoted whenever one makes something good of a bad situation. COVID-19 was the Urvashi Shabam in my case. Retired and homebound, COVID-19 gave me even more free time than before. On one hand, it helped me to polish my online skills. These days, nobody can live without that. On the other, it also gave me the extra time to read more and more. So, I reread the books on Hinduism, Buddhism, Ramayana, Mahabharata, Gita, etc. time and again, time and again. I had, and I still have, the habit of folding pages or writing or sticking post-it notes on the pages I found worth reading or rereading. Sometimes there were so many folded pages or post-it notes on the books that it was worth reading all over again. For example, I will show you just the book on Gita. These are my post-it notes. You can see the projecting out. Because every time you read Gita, you get a new meaning out of that. And that's exactly what happened to me. I read and reread and read and reread. And every time I reread, I interpreted a new meaning from that particular sloga or message. Now, while books on Mahabharata was fascinating, they were also confusing. Rereading did not help with the multitude of names, locations, and the events. It was then I realized that if that was the case with me, how difficult it would be for our children. Children are our future, the Yuvathmas. They are growing up in an environment that provides limited opportunity to learn about their roots. So that's how the idea about compiling a summarized version of our great epic was born. Well, while the idea was instantaneous, its implementation was not. It took me more than 18 months to complete the manuscript. In the beginning, I started jotting down a high-level version of the Mahabharata by capturing the places, the people, and the events. I expanded that as and when I found more information. And before I knew, there was enough material to digitalize my scribbling. So that's how my book is born. Now I'll talk a bit about the book itself. The story of Mahabharata, including the sibling rivalry between Pandavas and the Kauravas cousins, the deceitful dice game, the disrobing of Draupadi, Pandavas' exile leading to the war, Bhagavan Sri Krishna's leadership, Arjuna's despondency, spiritual teachings by Bhagavan Krishna, the war and its ultimate end, resulting in the crowning of Yudhishthira as the rightful king, are all well known to all. While these incidents form the foundation of the Mahabharata, there are a few things that are unique to my book. For example, throughout the book, I have made footnotes explaining a story behind a particular ritual for what it is being done. For example, this is a spiral bound copy of my book. And at the end of that, right in the beginning, there's a footnote explaining about Ganesha, how Ganesha was born, how Ganesha is always worshipped first. What's the reason behind that? These are all information that the Yuvathmas would be very, very happy to know, because by habit, everybody does that. But what is the reason behind that? So like that, I have tried to give as many footnotes as possible at every stage of the writing. There are other footnotes that explains what is Avatara, what is a Sampurna Avatara, what is Mahashivratri. Some references to Bhagavan Krishna's birth. What is Dahi Handi? Everybody has seen on Ashtami Rohini the breaking of the yogurt pot. What is Pradikshina? What that means? And what is unique about Pradikshina at the Shiva temple? What is an Ashwamedha Yajna, etc., etc. So, in other words, there are so many footnotes, each of which are an educational item by itself. So that's something very unique in my book. Then each chapter begins with the location or locations where the events took place. So that when you read, you can read it as an independent chapter, and it will give you where the event took place, on what location it happened, and who are the main players involved in that particular chapter. So, it's kind of an independent reading by itself. I've also tried to mention the province, also known as state, where the locations mentioned in the original Mahabharata are currently situated. Because keep in mind that when the Mahabharata was written, it was the Bharatavarsha. It was, much bigger than the India or Bharat that we know today. But I have tried to correlate and say where the location today is in reference to when Vyasa wrote that book. For example, just an example, there is a reference to Meru Peak in Mahabharata. Now, Meru Peak is currently in the Uttarakhand province of India. So like this, I try to relate, okay, so where is this location currently situated, in which state, in which province? There is a chapter dedicated to each day of the war. So everybody knows that the war took 18 days. So there are 18 chapters dedicated, one chapter for each day. References to events described in an earlier chapter are tagged so that the reader can go back and read back to refresh the memory. For example, when we are reading book 7, chapter 4, it has a reference to Indira's boon. In order for the reader to readily go back and refresh their memory, what was Indira's boon? The current chapter that you are reading will give you the chapter number and the book number where it was explained in the first place, so that without wasting your time or without searching yourself, you can immediately refer back to the original place where it was referred to. That way, there's a easy cross-reference between chapter to chapter. I've also included an ancient map of India that identifies the important locations mentioned in the book. This will help the reader to understand where the events took place. In other words, my message is that, okay, these are not hypothetical places. These are real locations that exist even today, and you can go and relate that looking at the map. For example, when you talk of Hastinapura or Kurukshetra, you can see exactly where it is looking at the map. I have also included a high-level family tree for the house of Kurus and the house of Yadus. The house of Kurus is including both the Kauravas and the Pandavas. And the house of Yadus obviously is the house that where Sri Krishna belonged, including his parents and grandparents and so on. So there is a family tree included explaining all these connections. And also the family tree explains how the Yadus and the Kurus were connected, or house of Yadus and the house of Kurus were connected to each other. While compiling this book, I also realized the difficulty that especially the young Indian youth would have in pronouncing many words and names. Example, the book refers to things like Akshauhini. Now, it's going to be very, very hard for the Western young minds to pronounce this. Ananda Shayanam is another word. Andardhana Astra is another word. Badrika Ashrama is another word. Drishta Dhaumanya is another word. Kandava Prastha is another word. Malsya Gandhi, and words like that, like Samanda Panchaga. So I have included a pronunciation guide along with my glossary at the end of the book, so that everybody who is reading it can, while checking at the glossary, can also know how to pronounce these long, typical Indian Sanskrit names. Last but not the least, the book is edited in keeping the Western readers in mind. So it has got all the Western slangs and styles so that it is in line with the reading habits of the Westerners. Some other facts about the book. In line with the original epic, my book is divided into 18 parvas or 18 books. Parva is a book. So the original Mahabharata has got 18 books within the book itself. And my book is also in line with that. It has got 18 books within the main book. The first parva introduces the readers to the house of Kurus. As always, reading a book, the first few chapters are a bit hard. And then you get to know the names and the places and all. And then towards the end, the reading gets easier. And more often than not, the story ends. In this case, yes, every story has to end. In this case, there is a sad ending to the whole story. But we'll talk about it at a later time. So the first parva introduces us to the house of Kurus. Starting with the patriarch, the King Shantanu, was the main character in this book. Down the line, it takes the readers to the birth of blind King Dhritarashtra, his younger stepbrother Pandu, and their younger stepbrother Vidura. Death of Pandu, birth of Pandavas and Kauravas, and the events leading to sibling rivalry eventually led to the Pandavas' abduction, Panchali's Swayamvara, Krishna meeting his cousins for the first time, are all included in the first parva. Pandavas returned to Hastinapura after the death of their father, and subsequent exile to Kandava Prastha, transformation of Kandava Prastha to Indraprastha by Indra and Vishwakarma at Krishna's ask, are all included in the first book. First book ends with Krishna and Arjuna securing the divine gifts of the chariot, the Sudarshana Chakra, the Gandiva and arrows from Agni, and burning of the Kandava forest. Second parva details the building of the magical assembly hall by Mayasura and the deceitful dice game, disrobing of Panchali, and the exile of Pandavas to the forest. Third parva summarizes Arjuna's visit to Devaloka. Arjuna was transported to, of course, Arjuna was the son of Indra, and there is a bigger story behind that. But he was transported to Indraloka on his bodily form by Indra from the 7th year of his exile, and he was there with his father for 5 years, getting advanced training on weapons and advanced weapons. So that's why he was taken to the Indraloka. So the third parva is about it, and it ends with the 12th year of their exile, when Yudhishthira, the eldest Pandava, meets his father Dharmadeva. That is the third parva. The fourth parva describes Pandavas along with Panchali, their life in the kingdom of Virada under a disguise. That is the 13th year of their exile. The fifth parva is where Lord Krishna starts taking a leadership role, and we see more and more leadership roles from the by Lord Krishna from fifth parva onwards. Lord Krishna negotiates on behalf of the Pandavas for the whole kingdom, then half kingdom, and Yudhishthira, in order to avoid the war, finally settles for 5 villages, 1 village for each Pandava, which is also rejected by the evil Duryodhana, and that's how the war starts. 6 to 9 parvas describe a little bit about the events leading to the war. 10th parva details how Drona's son Ashwatthama deceitfully killed the Pandava commander-in-chief, Drishtadamanya. 11th and 12th parvas describe the return of the Pandavas to Hastinapura and the crowning of Yudhishthira. So 11th and 12th parva is where the Pandavas come back to Hastinapura and Yudhishthira is crowned the king. 13th parva ends with the demise of Bhishma. So Bhishma, who was there throughout, the end of Bhishma is described on the 13th parva. 14th parva is about the Ashwamedha Yagna and how Lord Krishna brought back the stillborn son of Uttara to life. 15th parva details how Dhritarashtra decides to end his palace life, and the reading gets sadder from here onwards. 16th parva is mostly about the infighting at Dwaraka, where everybody, including Sri Krishna himself, decides to depart this world. 17th parva is about Parikshit crowning the new king, and 18th parva is how Yudhishthira himself gets transported to the Indraloka, and where he meets all his dead cousins and other relatives. So that is about the book, how it started. Now I'll talk a bit about some interesting facts about the book itself. So let's start with Veda Vyasa. I'm just taking the time here just to make sure that I think we're doing okay. So let's talk about Veda Vyasa's birth. Now, parents of Veda Vyasa were sage Parashara and Malsyagandhi. The sage got attracted to Malsyagandhi when she was transporting him across river Yamuna. Fearful of being cursed in case she refused his advances, Malsyagandhi requested for some favors. Those favors, according to her, innocent girl of 16, she thought, oh, he will never be able to satisfy or meet those favors. She thought they will be impossible to grant. So she put in 3 or 4 conditions that was most likely impossible for the sage to grant. But the sage, being who he was, all her requests were granted. Malchigandhi conceived and delivered a baby boy at the same time. Because he was born in the boat marooned to a tiny island, they named him Topanya. The baby grew into a full-sized man immediately and left his mother, assuring her that he was just a thought away. So that's how Vyasa was born. Now, Malchagandhi, at a later stage, was married to King Shantanu, the patriarch of the Kuru family. Vyasa was the paternal grandfather of both Kauravas and Pandavas. Now, something about Gandhari, wife of Dhritarashtra. She was the mother of Kauravas. Gandhari's father was the king of Gandhar, which is spread across the current Afghanistan and Pakistan. That technically makes her a Afghani or a Pakistani. The kingdom of Gandhar included cities like Takshashila and Peshawar, both of which are in modern Pakistan. Saddened by the death of her sons, she lost all her sons, all 100 sons, during the war. Gandhari cursed Sri Krishna that his clan, the entire Yadavas, would fight each other and perish. She cursed Krishna that he would die a lonely death. How many children did King Dhritarashtra had? What happened to them? Most of you would know this, but just in case not, King Dhritarashtra and Queen Gandhari had 101 children. 100 boys, 100 sons, and 1 girl by the name Dushala. Now, all of them were born outside Gandhari's womb. In keeping with this war, during disrobing of Panchali, Bhima slayed all 100 sons. Dhritarashtra, all 100 sons during the war. Dhritarashtra, the king, had one more son. His name was Yuyutsu, and that was with his palace maid Sugada. During the war, Yuyutsu crossed over to the Pandava side, and he was subsequently rewarded and appointed as a minister in Yudhishthira's administration. Actually, Yuyutsu was given in charge to take care of his father, and he was the only one to take care of his of the blind king. A bit information about Ashwatthama. Ashwatthama was the son of Drona. He fought against the Pandavas during the war. He was an accomplished warrior. He was one of the 5 warriors who knew the mantra for Brahmashira Astra. Brahmashira Astra is a weapon that manifested with 4 heads of Brahma at its tip. Only 5 Kshatriyas, namely Agnivesha, Drona, Arjuna, Karna, and Ashwatthama, had the knowledge of that weapon. Now, interestingly, Brahmashira Astra could be invoked into any objects, including a blade of grass. And when invoked, it would blaze with terrible flames, accompanied by loud thunders, turning the entire sky into fire. 12 years, there would be no rain. Everything including metal and soil, would be poisoned and nothing would grow. Unable to recall the Brahmashirastra that he had launched, Ashwatthama agreed to redirect it towards the unborn children of Pandavas because he wanted to eliminate the entire Pandava race. And doing that, he sterilized the wombs of the Pandava woman and killed Abhimanyu's child growing in Uttara's womb. At that, Krishna vowed that he would make the child alive, and that's exactly what he did. Evil and extremely ambitious, Ashwatthama once wanted to secure the Sudarshana Chakra from Bhagavan Krishna himself. When Krishna asked him why he wanted the Sudarshana Chakra, Ashwatthama said that he wanted it because he wanted to use against Krishna. So that was how evil he was. Now, who are the prominent survivors from the Kauravas side after the war? Only 3 major Kshatriyas lived to see the end of the war. That was Ashwatthama, Kritavarman, and Kripa Acharya. What happened to the Vishnu idol that was worshipped by Vasudeva and Krishna at Dwaraka? This is interesting. Brihaspati, the guru of Devas, with the help of Vayu, who is god of wind, transported the idol to a safe place currently known as Guruvayur. So the name came because Guru, the guru of Devas, with the help of Vayu, transported that to a place, and the place where it is today is called Ur, and Guruvayur. Ur means name. So that's how the name has come, Guruvayur. Though written years back, the divine author had made many references to modern technology. And at times, technology is not even invented today. A few examples I would mention here. The book talks about ectopic pregnancy, that is, growing a baby outside the womb. All the 101 Kaurava children, 100 boys and 1 girl, were born outside the womb. The book also refers to nuclear fission without uranium and nuclear fusion without deuterium. So think of that, written years and years back. It has references to nuclear fission and fusion. The book talks about mind reading. It talks about touch screen. It talks about fingerprint recognition. It talks about space cities or interconnected space cities like Tripura. 3 cities connected together in the space with a lot of people living there happily. Under ocean city, it talks about TSM. TSM stands for thought summon message. So you think of me, I get a message saying that so-and-so is thinking of me. So the book talks about that. It talks about GPS, global positioning skills. Now, this is not the current GPS that you know. That GPS says that, okay, through the thought summon message, I know that somebody is thinking of me. But by the same token, I also know that when I get the message, okay, where is your physical location? That way, I can come to you by teletransportation. So, all these technologies, many of which are not even there. Now, during the war, Vedavyasa wanted to give divine vision to Dhritarashtra, the blind king, so that he can see what was going on. But the blind king said, no, I don't want it. I would rather have my personal aide, Sanjaya, narrate the events that is happening to me. So Vyasa gave occult vision and hearing to Sanjaya, so that sitting next to the king in Hastinapura, he could narrate everything that was happening at Kurukshetra. Now, the shortest distance between Hastinapura and Kurukshetra is about 158 kilometers. Just imagine, how could somebody sitting 158 kilometers away see in real time what was happening there, hear in real time what was happening there, and then narrate all that to the blind king? So those kind of technologies are not even today. So all these things are mentioned and probably were available during those days. We don't know. Now, it's very interesting to know that apart from giving occult vision to Sanjaya, Vyasa, the divine author, also gave him a backup plan. In case the occult vision and hearing failed, Vyasa also blessed Sanjaya with teleportation and photographic memory. In other words, for whatever reason, if he cannot see and hear, he was able to transform himself real time, minimum 158 kilometers, in real time, transport himself, be at the battlefield, see everything and remember everything. At the end of the day, transport himself back and narrate all those things from the beginning to the king. So that was the backup plan. But I don't think there is any reference to the teleportation and photographic memory need throughout the book, because Sanjaya was able to narrate everything in real time. Well, I think that concludes most of my speech for today. Priya, now we will open up for question and answers.
Thank you, Mr. Madhavan Kutty. That was extremely insightful. We can move on to the question and answer period. So just a reminder for everyone, if you have any questions for Sri Madhavan Kutty, please send them through the chat box function on Zoom. And the chat box function can be found on the bottom of the screen. There's a button that says chat, so you can ask your questions over there. So we'll just maybe give a minute to everyone to ask questions. Oh, we have one question. So the question is, how many days did the Mahabharata war last?
The Mahabharata war lasted 18 days. And if I can give a little bit more background to that, out of the 18 days, Bhishmacharya was the commander-in-chief for 10 days. I'm talking about the Kaurava side now. Bhishmacharya was commander-in-chief for 10 days. And then when he fell, in fact, he didn't die. When he fell, Dronacharya took over and he was in charge for 5 days. When he died, Karna took over for 2 days. And when Karna died, it was Shaila who was the commander-in-chief for 1 day. So total 18 days, 10 days led by Bhishma, 5 days led by Drona, 2 days by Karna, and 1 day by Shaila. And one night, one particular night, it was not during the day, after the death of Shaila, before the death of Duryodhana, he was fallen, but he had not died. Ashwatthama went to see him, and at that time, Duryodhana asked Ashwatthama to become the commander-in-chief because Ashwatthama promised revenge. He said that he is going to kill the commander-in-chief of the Pandavas, along with all the 5 sons of Panchali and others. So that night, by decide, he went and killed when they were sleeping. He went and killed the commander-in-chief of Pandavas and all the 5 children of Panchali. So, but technically, Achyutama was not the commander-in-chief for one whole day. He was just managing for one night. So technically, 18 days, 10 days for Bhishma, 5 days for Drona, 2 days for Karna, 1 day for Shala. On the Pandava side, we had only just one commander-in-chief, was Drishtadamanya. He was the son of Drupada and brother of Draupadi or Panchali. Any other question?
Thank you for that answer. So I've gotten a couple of questions directly to me. So the first question is, what inspired you to write this book?
Well, I kind of, touched it in a different way. One is, I was thinking about my own situation, I mean, you always start that way. Okay, my sons, like I said, they grew up in the West. They don't have much knowledge about, our ancient roots. And we were busy, settling down, establishing a career and life. And so that as parents, I don't think we have done a great job in educating them. The only exposure they had was, when once in a year or once in 2 years, when we go back home, we get to see all this, we visit all the temples and things like that. But so it was more of a, selfish thing. And then it was also an educative thing for myself, because it was confusing to me when I started reading it. I myself was finding it difficult. So I started jotting down, and then before I knew, I thought, okay, probably this is going to be helpful to the Yuvathma, the youth, and but anybody can read it and enjoy it. So that's how the book started.
Thank you for that answer. Another question that I got directly to me is, why did Krishna fight from the Kauravas side?
Why did Krishna? Because Krishna is always on the side of Dharma. Even the Kauravas side, the prominent members like the Bhishma himself or Gandhari has said that where there is Dharma, Krishna is there. And where there is Krishna, Dharma is there. So Krishna is always on the side of Dharma. And he knew all the while that the Pandavas were right. He knew all the while that the Kauravas were wrong. They were greedy. There was too much attachment and ego and greed on their side. They took over what was rightfully the Pandavas, but they took over by deceit. And the Pandavas were ready to accept just 5 villages. They started, rightfully the whole kingdom belonged to them. Then they agreed to have half the kingdom. Then they decided, bargaining and bargaining and bargaining. Finally, they said, okay, we are five brothers. He was 5 villages. But Duryodhana said, no, not even land to put the pin of a needle. That was what he said. Not even land to put the pin of a needle. So there was no choice but to start the war. And that's all. So Krishna was always on the side of Dharma. He was not on either Pandavas or this, but he knew Pandavas were on the side of Dharma. Yes.
Thank you for that answer. I think the person who asked the question actually didn't mean to say from the Kaurava side, but from the Pandava side, but you answered the question. So thank you for that. Our next question is, in your opinion, what is the greatest lesson we can take from the Mahabharata to apply in our day-to-day lives?
Well, there are a lot of lessons you can take there is a moral in each chapter of each book. But I think it all goes back to the same old, the cardinal sins, greed, anger, attachment, lust, jealousy, ego. If you can manage all these things, then your life will be easy. In fact, there are a few chapters were dedicated to this kind of thing, where Bhishmacharya, before his death, he teaches his nephews about many things about human life and things like that. Krishna himself wrote the Gita. I am in no way qualified to speak about Gita, even though I have read it many times. But the more I read, the more I learn. So, but how he removed the despondency from Arjuna. Arjuna's despondency was basically because of attachment. Attachment was mainly because of the bodily affection. Okay, he's my uncle, he's my father, he's my brother, that kind of attachment. He's my teacher. But Krishna removed that kind of attachment and said, you look at the person as an Atma, as a soul, and then he taught him that Atma never dies. So even if the person dies, the physical body dies, the Atma never dies. So that is how he educated Arjuna. So every chapter of every book has a moral story behind that. But the end of it is all about, if you can control all these voices, 5 or 6 voices, then you are in control of yourself.
Thank you for that answer. Our next question is, are you going to write another book, maybe about the Ramayana?
You know what? I wouldn't mind writing another book, but I don't want to make any promises right now. I may not. It all depends upon, like I said, this came as a instant idea, but the ideas are always easy. The implementation side of that is not that easy. So it takes time, but definitely I will, keep my options open. Yeah. Thank you for that.
Well, if you do write one, we would be very excited to read it. Our next question is, according to you, who was the most innocent character in the Mahabharata? Is it Karna?
I wouldn't. Every character is a very, very strong character in Mahabharata. Start with Bhishma. He sacrificed his whole life. He was the rightful king, but he never became the king. He never wanted to become king, even though he ruled the kingdom many times on others' behalf. So, starting from Bhishma, Gandhari, she tied herself because her husband is blind. Said, "What you cannot see, I don't want to see." Throughout, from the wedding till her death, she never opened that. Karna is another classic case. Initially he had a very, very sadful life. But from the middle of the book, from the time Kundi, the mother of Karna, went and told her that, hey, you are my son. You are the eldest Pandava. You can be, and the other 5 Pandavas will worship you. So please don't fight. Please come back. But Karna was a man of character. I really admire him. Even knowing that, he never went away. Because he could have said, oh, okay, Duryodhana, thank you very much for your help. I'm going. No. He stayed with Duryodhana. He knew that Duryodhana was evil. In spite of that, he stayed with him. Till that, and he sacrificed his own life for that, for Duryodhana. So that's another, great character. So each character within the book are great. we cannot say one is better than the other. It's a marvelous book for somebody like, Veda Vyasa to come up with this kind of characters is unbelievable. Any other question?
Thank you for that answer. We have one last question, and it's, how can we obtain your book?
Okay, so the status of the book is, it is on digital world. It is available on Amazon right now. I have completed the formatting of the book, and the book is ready. It's about 380 pages or something. It has got all the the family tree and everything that you can see, very well laid out. So the next step for me is to print it. I can load it into Amazon and make available on Amazon. But I can also, I'm talking to somebody here locally, for limited number of copies. So if somebody is interested, they can reach out to me, and probably I'll be more than happy to print a few copies here, sign it myself, and then hand it out to them.
Thank you for that answer. I think we have one last question, which is, what advice would you give to the younger generation?
You know what, the younger generation is so busy. They have no time for anything or to do anything. At the end of the day, nothing gets done because they are leaving everything done, half done. If only you stay focused on one, complete it. At least you can say, okay, I completed that. Now they are putting their hand on a million things at the same time. Nothing gets completed. And that builds up tension. That brings up, So that is not a healthy situation. I would request them to take it easy, Life is not all about running around and this and that and all. Yes, there are challenges. There will be challenges. The message is to learn how to manage the challenges. Everybody had challenges. Sri trying so bad. Look, compared to our challenges, look at his challenges. Everybody had challenges. The challenge is, as long as there is life, there will be challenges. So don't get too heated about it, learn to take things easy and lead a peaceful, not so hectic life. You need to calm down. You need to cut down. You need to make a life more balanced. Find time for everything. That's my advice.
Thank you for that. So I think we are almost out of time. So I think that concludes our question and answer period. And a huge thank you to Mr. Madhavan Kutty for speaking at our Yuva Chat Spiritual Talks for the Young Minded event and then informing us on the Mahabharata. We are so blessed to have heard from you today. And as Mr. Madhavan Kutty had said earlier, you can find the Kindle ebook version of the book, A Summary for Beginners, the Mahabharata, on Amazon, and formatting of the print version is almost complete, and Amazon will be launching it soon. And Mr. Madhavan Kutty is planning on printing a few copies in the GTA, and if anyone is interested, please contact him directly on or before October 9th at 416-206-4292. Again, the number is 416-206-4292. And to stay up to date on future Yuvathma events, please follow us on our Yuvathma social media pages. Our Facebook page is Yuvathma GTOB, and on Instagram, our handle is yuvathma.gtob. And we will be posting a variety of events in the future, so keep an eye on our social media pages to stay informed. I hope everyone has an amazing weekend, and I look forward to seeing you all at future events. Take care, thank you, and bye for now.
Thank you, Priya.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.